let me get to the next part of our program, which is our panel discussion. We hope this really can lay the groundwork for improved community efforts to serve veterans. And I'd like to start by introducing our distinguished moderator. Bob Ray Sanders' journalism career has spanned more than 4 decades in 3 different media, newspaper, television, and radio. Just a few months ago, he retired from his roles as associate editor, vice president, and member of the editorial board of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. You're also undoubtedly familiar with his award-winning work at PBS and KERA Television. We're very pleased to have Mr. Sanders with us today to moderate today's panel. Thank you, Bob Ray.
Oh, so I guess I should introduce the rest of you. We have with us, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. It is a good afternoon, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Judge Jenkins says yes, so I guess that's all it takes. We have with us Sheila Holbrook White, who's the Resource Development Director of MHMR of Tarrant County. Dr. John Burris, Chief Executive Officer for Metro Care Services in Dallas. And Domingo Rodriguez, who's the PHSS instructor, American Red Cross board member at VETCO. All right, let me just start by going to one of the real positive things I saw in this report was that veterans are doing much better than the general population in terms of economics, median income, home ownership, employment. Should we all be rejoicing here instead of looking so downtrodden today? Or is this a camouflage for the bigger issues?
Start. I think on the transportation issues, there is some camouflage there. There is some camouflage there. I think that the number of veterans who struggle with transportation is probably low in absolute numbers, but those needs are incredibly intense for those that don't have those resources. But I think it's important to identify that there's some additional camouflage in getting a solid sense of what veterans experience in terms of their transportation challenges. One is that the person who is mobile today may not be mobile tomorrow. Cars break down. Family members that have always taken you to your VA appointment may get another job, move out of town, or pass. So the person who has transportation today may tomorrow face something very different. The second mask is the one that challenges me more in terms of a systems approach, which is that for many folks, veterans included, who need transportation, they're constantly confronted with trying to patch together options. And those options are not based on their need. It's not based on their challenges. It's based on where do you live? Do you live in an area that has public transportation? What's your demographic? What are some of your demographic qualifications? We have some services that only serve people over 60. What if you're 59 years old and you're a veteran? You're out of luck. There are those that also are challenged because of the purpose of the trip. I am a veteran. I need to go to the VA. I may be able to get a trip through the VA's transportation service, but when I need to go to the pharmacy, to the grocery, I don't have options. The purpose of my trip might knock me out. Again, not an issue of need. It's how systematically we qualify in silo service. And then finally, the financial resources. There may be options available, but I can't afford them. And so, again, where I think absolute numbers may be low, the needs for those folks are intense.
All right, and we're going to come back and talk a lot more about transportation, but John?
Sure, and I agree with everything Sheila said, and I think those are all critical points. I do want to back up and say, yes, we should celebrate. Every time we house a homeless vet, we should celebrate. Every time we have somebody that we take out of a situation of despair and move them forward in life, we should celebrate. But we can't consider it a finish line. We can't consider that the job is well done and now we get to go home and quit. Because often when you solve the most immediately apparent issues, all you do is uncover the next layer of challenges that we need to help, and we need to help move people along in that path. So yes, we should celebrate. Yes, we should say job well done to those that have been able to benefit, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Domingo?
I think some of it comes down to also the fact that, we have such a wide, diverse population here, and we have so much good going on in this North Texas area, that now what I've seen in the past year is I've seen veterans starting to come from different areas, and they're coming here with no support system whatsoever. They're just coming here.
Are they
So-
coming here because they think the services are available?
They're hearing from other people that it's a great area. You're seeing it in different reports about how this is the place to be for employment. This is the place to be for growing veteran issues. So they're picking up, leaving everything behind and coming here for whatever reason. That's what's happening. So because they don't have that support system, I think we need to find a way of, creating that support system for them.
Okay, and yet, Domingo, I mean, as the report says, and the people who did the study said, of the 367,000 veterans we have here, we do have some services that we can be proud of, but I think I've heard you say that many veterans don't know about those services, and I'm trying to figure out why is that?
Every time I talk to a new veteran and they're asking me for services and they're asking me, how can I get some help? It comes down to, well, you can go over here and talk to these people or that. Thankfully, I know probably 70% of the people in this room through one way or another, and that's great. The other 30%, I definitely want to hit you up. But it comes down to, I'm one person, and the best way to come about this is everyone in here know everyone else, because we all know someone who needs that help, who can use those services. And so you heard me say before, if we could have some type of guide like thankfully Tarrant County Veterans Coalition and in conjunction with the United Way was able to make that resource guide, maybe something like that.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at all these people in this room right now. Aren't there networks of veterans around here who just naturally communicate that kind of information, or am I just wrong on that?
Well, we do. We do communicate with each other. We do talk to each other. The problem is if we don't have that veteran in front of us, then how do they get that information? It has to be out to other people who know how to get to us. Whether it's sitting at a bus stop and somebody picks it up and says, hey, my uncle could use this, or my cousin could use this. It all comes down to being able to disseminate that information to them in the correct format and a way that they can call that number or even have a physical location that they can go to and go talk to someone.
Okay, do the rest of you see the lack of communication as a major problem, or in your circles, is it clear?
Sure, and the plethora of front doors, often so many different front doors. I was having conversations before we started today about how do we facilitate access to a system which brings you into a room, metaphorically, where you have everybody right around you rather than having to go each one successively. So I absolutely agree with that.
Well, also, I was hearing from the report givers here who say that in Dallas and Fort Worth, there are a lot of services, it appears to be. Of course, there are a lot of veterans right here in those two counties, Tarrant and Dallas. But what about counties like Ellis and Somerville and places like that, where there is a higher concentration of veterans, but the support isn't there? Well, how do we get services there? Is it, and why don't we have them already to the degree that they're needed? Is it like a community involvement, like a political will? You tell me. I want to
Who's
throw it
that
over
for?
the politicians.
Who's that for?
It's for all of you.
Okay, well, I'll start with that. I mean,
We got
essentially-
representatives of politicians out here. I just want to see if we have any lack of political will.
I don't know, I don't know about that aspect of it and all, but I will say that in dealing with some folks out in Hood County or even in those areas, they're grasping at what they have. They're getting a hold of what they have out there and using it to the best of their ability. I mean, the VSOs can tell you the numbers that they have out there. The county VSOs can tell you the numbers that they have out there. And you're seeing the VFWs and the American Legions out in those areas sort of thriving compared to the ones that are here in Dallas or in Fort Worth. But it does boil down to being able to, once again, have that nexus, not a one-stop shop. I mean, those people who know me know I hate that term. Not a one-stop shop. It should be more like a hub of being able to get that information out to the veteran via whatever device that it is. There are nationally known organizations that you see them and the first thing you think of is, oh, a veteran can get help there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they will.
And speaking of one stop, I mean, obviously, veterans have more than one problem in many cases. So one agency would not be able to solve all of their problems, I'm guessing.
I want to go back to something that Domingo said, and I think John as well. I do think there's a critical distinction that we have to make, and we see this in the transportation work we do. Simply having information is not enough. Oftentimes, we call it the warm handoff, which I don't care for much more than one-stop shop. But it's having somebody who will help you navigate a system that may not be familiar, a system that is complicated, a system that's going to require eligibility determinations. It's not simply providing information. I think what Domingo is referencing is you're providing information, but you're also a connector.
Yes.
And I think that one-on-one connection is often the difference between a person who gets some information and the person who acts. Yes, we can provide it on websites and on cell phones and on apps, and those are all great tools, but I think we can overestimate its ability to help a person identify an option if there is also not a personal connection that attaches to it.
And I'm guessing a lot of these older veterans perhaps don't have access to those websites or don't feel comfortable with them. And they're looking for something a lot more personal than a computer screen.
Well, believe it or not, I'm sorry, but believe it or not, I've found that a lot of younger veterans are the ones that aren't the ones that they don't have Facebook sites. There's a lot of them that I'm meeting that are in trouble that they don't have those type structures. They don't have that information conduit that they can use to do that. So they don't have Facebook accounts. They don't have Twitter. They're not actually interacting socially via social media and actually in the community. So this is, one of the things that we had talked about before on our previous phone calls was such a thing as like a Cohen clinic, the Cohen clinic that's coming up, because then now you have something that's not in the center of a city, it's actually out in the periphery. And I'll go ahead and let you speak about that since you're.
Thank you for the segue. Yeah, so I guess going back to the original question, it is harder to create something in a rural area because the absolute number is important. And the density is also important, but the absolute number of having a demand is important. So in order to reach those peripheral areas, we may need to have better linkages to help some of the smaller areas, some of the more rural areas, to develop things that they couldn't otherwise necessarily develop on their own. And programs like the Cohen Center, which we're going to open up on the north side of Dallas County, can try to help with other certainly capable BSOs in the area to extend reach into areas where the rural nature of the community is limiting, where there's not a critical mass in many cases in one location to get things started, and public transportation in those areas is even more limited than it probably is in the urban areas.
And I guess that would cut down travel time for a place in that area, but again, that's in the north of Dallas. What about the south?
Well, in the south of Dallas, we also have other aspects that you could look at. And it isn't just, South Dallas, but you could also use it in terms of like what the Cohen Clinic is doing. They're trying to get out and go out into those areas. You have Military Veteran Peer Network, which goes out into those outlying areas. And if you look at what's going on with them, they're actually more active outside of the DFW area because it's like I said, they have those groups out there, and they're grasping at them and they're holding on to them so tightly that that's what they're actually using. But if you want to talk about South Dallas, you already have established organizations out there like the Veteran Resource Center.
Now, I'm talking about even counties south of Dallas is what I was really thinking of.
Well, and I think we may have to start to explore ways to deliver services to people that we've not, for example, taking service to them rather than having them. So we have a central location perhaps, but we may have to figure out ways to get the services out into the periphery to people where they need us.
Let's also talk about, and by the way, audience, we're going to come to questions from you, and some of you may have ideas to give us here before we leave, so we'll get to that in just a minute. But what the report talks about is the difference needs of the older veterans, those World War II, Vietnam, Korea veterans, versus the needs of these post 9/11 or Gulf War veterans. Are you finding that they do have different needs? I mean, the older veterans more healthcare oriented, younger veterans more employment or economic related? Are you finding that in your
Yeah, from the healthcare, I'll speak from the medical perspective. In the healthcare perspective, of course, as any of us age, we develop more and more different kinds of maladies that we need attention to. And so the overall general health of folks who are aging is deteriorating. The other thing I think that I want to make sure we make the point of is that there's a lot of folks who served in any conflict who don't have a problem, who don't have a diagnosis, who don't have something, and I say they don't have a problem. They don't have a problem in the sense of something that we would label or something that's immediately apparent. And so what they're often struggling with is what is it that's your life circumstance at 35 years of age is bringing to your plate versus 65 years of age. So I think Phil said that when you get to be that age and retirement age, you often have struggles around the emotional impact of retirement and what's it like to move on to that part of your life. Well, you don't have that same thing at 35. So absolutely, those eras are going to have different emotional, psychological, medical needs.
And we
Go
see
ahead,
the
Sheila.
same with older veterans, which are among the groups that we talk to the most. Oftentimes, the trip is not to the VA, it's to the grocery, it's to going to a pharmacy, it's going to Social Security Administration to get sort of personal business taken care of. So we see that. With our younger veterans, the call is usually prompted because they are no longer or will be unable to drive for some period of time while they wait, for example, for an adaptive vehicle and go through process. And they're looking for trips to employment, to school, and that sort of thing. We do see a pretty different profile in terms of the needs there.
In particular with the Vietnam veteran, and I am going to come to transportation, let you talk more about that. But the Vietnam veteran who, it was thought at least, that they lost out on the front end. They didn't get care when they first got out of the military. They went for years without having care, whether it's mental health, physical, whatever. The economic issues being dealt with. Is that a particular problem that we're still dealing with the Vietnam veteran versus the other veterans out there?
I think it's a problem. It comes down to whether it's 9/11 or Vietnam era vets, it comes down to transition. There's a problem with transition. Somewhere they're getting lost in the sauce and they're not able to continue on where they're going. So they're looking for that lifeline to get there. And so even whether it's someone who had a job for however long and they got laid off, or someone who just came out of the military, it still adds up to being a problem in transition. Not having that base support of being able to utilize those resources that are available to them and then use them correctly. That's what it boils down to.
Okay. Well, and again, let's get to transportation, because, I mean, you have something called My Ride program. What is that?
My Ride Tarrant, and we have a sister project, My Ride Dallas. We provide one-on-one mobility options counseling. You're a veteran, you call us, we talk with you. We don't just give you a list of 50 phone numbers and say, good luck with that, off you go. We will go through, interview you so that we can identify what you may be eligible for and help you connect. If you need assistance with an application, we'll help you with that. If you start to have some issues with a provider, we'll troubleshoot that with you. And in the last 3 years of the 5,000-ish calls we've had, about 12% have been veterans. They tend, however, to skew a little bit older than the population. They tend to be Korea War and World War II folks who are at a point where they have decided to either stop driving voluntarily or other people have made that decision clear. And that's where we're seeing those veterans, they tend to skew a little bit older.
Okay, now that's Dallas and Fort Worth,
Tarrant and Dallas.
Dallas and Tarrant. What about the other counties? Are there similar programs?
There are not currently, but there are options through, for example, 211, which is available throughout the region. But the challenge there becomes, again, it's that distinction between I can give you information or I can give you information and help connect you. And that's not being done in most of those other counties.
Okay, well, let's talk about that too, because when it comes to healthcare particularly, and getting these kinds of services, we always talk about the wait time. You know, how long does it take for me to get the, I mean, and I think we've improved in healthcare, at least over the last couple of years, from what the president tells me. Not that he told me personally, but that's the propaganda at least. I mean, do we still have problems with wait times for veterans to get care, mental health, physical care, transportation? Is that still a problem?
Well, I think the data presented today says that getting into the system may be fairly easy or quick. But then I still think that, and I believe that there's data that would show that maybe after that, there's all kinds of different challenges to sustain care, to get an ongoing care, to provide care wherever you live, much of what we're talking about today. So it was pretty optimistic to see the access and how quickly people can get in. There may not be much that's robust after that.
And I would guess that would be the same with employment as well. I mean, there's employment training. There are people getting entry-level jobs, but retention, I understand, is a problem. Am I right on that? Go ahead.
So one of the things that I've been able to look at and find was that there's a study out, and I can't remember exactly who did it, but it comes down to 68% of all veterans have 2 to 3 jobs within their first 2 years out of the military. You know, and it comes down to, that's an amazing number, if
And
you think about
why
it.
is that, Domingo?
And I think a lot of it too is because of the underemployment issue. They take a job, and we have a lot of great great companies out there that are taking in these veterans, and they're offering these programs and things, but then it comes down to, when we're in the service, we do so many things. It isn't just this job, you're in charge of this, that, this and that. No matter what rank structure it is, if you had good leaders, you were doing more than just one thing. And now you go into a job where you're just doing one thing, and that's all you're doing, and it kind of shuts down your brain. I know for me, that's what it came down to. I saw the numbers for the median wage earning, and my very first question to that was, does that include disability or any other type of compensation in there? Because I know that when they fill that out, are they throwing in those numbers in there? So that's the very first question that I had in there, because that could kind of throw things out. Yes, they're getting more pay, but if they're underemployed, it's still the same as, it's probably even, you know, just a little bit worse than being underemployed.
Well, we'll pose that to Philip and Kate when we get to the question and answer in just a few minutes. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, so quickly on the biology of that, it's an interesting phenomenon we don't ever talk about in any circles that I've been in, is service in the way that particularly the OEF, OIF vets have looked at this is a biology-changing event. So what Domingo's describing and what happens when you're in service is that we change your brain. We know it. It's inescapable. You can't get away from it. And then what happens when you come back and you're transitioned is you try to go to a position that is nothing like that, despite the fact that we've changed your brain to prepare for this different kind of workload and environment. And so there is a predictability to this, that this biology that we've induced by the service will have a struggle to adapt to most of what we would call mainstream employment because of the things that you just heard and otherwise.
Well, and I think the study points out too that, I mean, when it comes to employment, how do you adapt what military training is to civilian training? And I know there are employers who are trying to deal with that you can take your radio operators, whatever you did in the military, and apply it to some job over here. But many of those jobs don't translate automatically to civilian life, right? And so it's retraining we're talking about. Am I right?
We see, I think, for employment for veterans, that what we've seen, and I can only speak for Tarrant County, although I suspect there will be analogies in other communities, the highest paying jobs are not in the downtown Fort Worth area. They're in the areas surrounding it. They're in Arlington. They're in areas that are not currently served by our public transportation authority.
I was going to say, I mean,
And so the mismatch becomes challenging. So a person might be able to pull off a 9-to-5 job or use some other terms, but the challenge becomes when the hours change, when they need to go to different locations. There's a huge spatial mismatch between where people live, where they can afford to live, and often the jobs, if they don't have transportation to get them there, their own transportation.
The other thing too that struck me, I think the one thing that struck me more than anything else was the lack of services for women here. Now that should be alarming. And again, there are over 45,000 women veterans in North Texas. I don't know how many of them are in need of housing, how many of them are considered homeless, but that's a blot on us if we can't provide for women and children. Tell me what happened there. How did we drop the ball on that one? Or do you know?
Many women are not many women who served are not.
Oh, can y'all hear?
Many women who served, are not comfortable with some of the existing institutions that are available. And the institutions have not developed necessarily the type of services and the array of services that need to be delivered. So I think one of the most important bullets in the presentation we just had was, how do we do better at grant writing? How do we do better at soliciting support to build those kinds of infrastructures that women, and not just the women who serve, but also spouses, children, et cetera, loved ones, how do we build those kinds of infrastructure so that there is an option for them?
Yeah, I think they pointed out that one of the problems is that they have children, and a lot of these services don't provide for people with children. So, I mean, I know there are some that do, but we don't have
And the
enough.
children may be struggling. And that may be the identified need to get folks in. So services for the children needs to also be a part of what we do. And our existing apparatus doesn't deal with that as well as it could.
And I think another aspect of it too that needs to be addressed, that needs to be said, is the fact that a lot of women veterans that I talk to, that I come across and we're looking for help for, they don't consider themselves veterans or veterans worthy of the services because maybe they didn't serve here, or maybe they weren't here, or maybe they were in a support role. As crazy as it sounds,
It does
they
sound
don't
crazy.
consider themselves veterans.
Wow.
One, I think the other I just want to point out is that I think something that is becoming a greater area of study is women, quite frankly, particularly women with children, they travel differently than men. If you think about public transportation as an option for going to work, you pick up the bus, you go to your destination, you come home. For a woman with children who has to drop people off at daycare, at school, that trip just got more complicated. Now I have to go from my home to childcare to the job. And I'm going to have to reverse that, by the way, when I come home tonight. Do I stop and get groceries? One of the things we keep seeing over and over again in talking to women where they're exploring using transit is, I can't do it because if my kids get sick, it'll take me too long to get to school. And so we don't build transit services that support women in general, and then add to that a veteran with children, and you may have made her life even more complicated if she's got to go to a variety of different agencies for services because she can't find an obvious answer. I think that's one of the challenges we face.
And then again, the study suggests that we ought to be looking at this holistically. I mean, you've got to look at the housing, you've got to look at the medical care, you've got to look at the economics, the employment. And that's bringing in a lot of the people who are in this room, as a matter of fact, trying to make all of that happen. And I think we've been trying to do that some, but I want to get back in it because I don't want to get the politicians off the hook here. Y'all know me. I can't help it. Because, I mean, the report clearly says that locally, particularly in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, things are sort of pretty good. But it falls mostly on nonprofits who are making many of these things happen, particularly in these outlying areas. Where are the local government, state government, county government? What are they doing to alleviate some of these problems that we just talked about? Or do you know?
All three of us work for county governmental agencies.
Yeah,
So, Judge Jenkins,
I hear you, I hear you.
I'm just,
all three of us do. And I think counties can step up in ways, the state has stepped up with things like the Veteran Peer Support Network. There are efforts that are coming from those different levels of government, and they are making a difference. That being said, there's still a lot of gap to be filled by other nonprofits and by other entities besides counties and state governments.
Yeah, well, can I just say this just out loud, and y'all can disagree with me later. I'm not on the panel, but the cut in state funding, I mean, when it comes, I mean, actually in the last couple of years, a couple of sessions, we've had a little more in mental health. But there was a time when session after session after session, every time we had a budget crisis, one of the first things to get cut was mental health. The state has not stepped up, and we have politicians who are proud to say, we've cut budgets. And a lot of the people who are being affected by those cut budgets are the people that we're talking about right now. Am I wrong in saying that? Am I off base? Oh, I got an amen corner over here. Okay. So, I mean, again, we still have work to do on the political scene.
well, I'll tell you, as a guy who's out in the field, who goes out and talks to veterans and goes through, and my job specifically is to find out what they need and find them those services, and then get them to that, you know, to that nexus. That's my job, to go through. So I, as that person, and there's many people in this room who do the exact same type of job, whether it's nonprofit or you know, something else, what I would love to see is something, some space where they're there and they're vetted out, so we don't have to go through and try to find out exactly what this organization is, why they just popped up overnight, and how they, you know, all of a sudden came up with all this stuff. But now, it's someplace that I can go to, and there's the representative that I need to talk to, or it's all in one place. And it's, you know, I'm all around Dallas County, every day, all day, and it's a big place.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to speak to Tarrant County, and again, just pointing out a couple of things. County Judge Whitley, who is not with us today, was part of a group, in fact, was a co-lead of a group called the Tarrant Riders Network. And that network is a group of city governments, county governments, nonprofits, folks who use transit, public transportation providers, who get together on a regular basis to identify opportunities for improvement. When we started to see folks who kind of fell into gaps, they're not old enough, they quite frankly don't live in the right community, i.e. for public transit or for transit options that might be available, that group came together and developed a volunteer driver program. We requested funding from the North Central Texas Council of Governments. It does help that the judge is on the Regional Transportation Committee and Council and got that money. Catholic Charities, a nonprofit, provides the service. And so I think there are some good examples of county governments that come together and are looking at those issues. For this coming year, the two priorities for 2016 for the network are veterans and employment. And I think, again, part of that, a lot of that coalesce process came out of the leadership of a county judge that really just couldn't stand hearing about people not getting to medical trips, grocery stores, employment trips, and veterans.
And yet, I mean, one example that they mentioned in the report, Tarrant County, this veterans housing unit, but they quickly say that I think it holds 30, if I'm.
Liberty House that holds 30.
Liberty House holds 30, but it's usually full.
Indeed it is.
So that means we need more service. Okay. Let me ask one last question, then I'll turn it over to you folks in the audience. I've seen so many reports written over the years, and I've seen them received and filed. At the county level, school districts, I mean, reports all over the place. I'm asking, is this another one that's going to be received and filed, or is this something that you think we're going to act on? Anybody?
I personally think, with the amount of people that we have in this room and the quality of people that we have in this room, that, like I said, I know probably 70% of you, I see something coming out of it. And, I see us going through and actually, everybody's got their little agenda that they're going to pick out of this today. So hopefully somebody can take that and run with it and go through. But just realize that it isn't necessarily, I mean, right here, the main thing we focused on right here is Vietnam veterans and not post 9/11 veterans, right? What about those guys that are in between? I've had phone calls from people that call me that say, hey, this vet needs help. He's here, all of a sudden they dropped him off at the VA and now he has no place to live, he has no job, he has no money, income, anything that can get him an apartment. My very first question, are you 9/11 or not? Are you OEF, OIF? And if you don't know what that means, then you're not one, So, and it comes down to, if they say yes, I'm like, yes, perfect. I know people I can go to and send them to it. But if they say no, then it becomes an issue, because finding that help for that guy or woman that did not serve during those two time frames becomes quite literally hell.
Yeah, you look around this room, the burden is on this room and the people we can engage to make sure something comes of this that moves us forward. So shame on us if we don't, but I'm going to say yes, we're going to get something done from this. We're going to, as a whole, we're going to be able to take this forward and do meaningful things with it.
And I guess I would go back to two. One opportunity that is going to be launched in June is a website resource called My Ride North Texas, which will lay out transportation options across 14 counties. It was funded by Veterans Community Transportation Living Initiative funds specifically to help veterans make that connection. It will launch in June. The other is that as of this morning, the Federal Transit Administration dropped a call for projects called Rides to Wellness, Demonstration and Innovative Coordinated Access. I would think this is a room full of people who should be considering applying. The veterans population is not specifically identified as a priority, but it is definitely in the mix. And this might be an opportunity for those folks in the VA who are probably going to die when I say this, for the VA to work with some communities that are struggling with opportunities to get people to medical care.
Okay, audience, it's your turn. Here's how it's going to work. Raise your hand. Leary is going to be our Oprah Winfrey for today. And so she'll be coming. Wait till the microphone gets to you, but let us see you so that we can make our ways there and know where you're going to be. And by the way, Philip and Kate are available to answer questions during the session as well. Go ahead.
So I'm Zach McGura, Veteran Service Officer for Collin County. Wow, I want to talk for about 20 minutes, but that just can't happen. So
No,
one
okay.
suggestion would definitely be get a county service officer on this panel, because the worst thing that a vet or somebody going through this process wants to do is to hit 5 stops before they actually get the help. So you look at it and you think long-term benefits and short-term emergencies, and that's something that a county veteran service officer can help with. File, start the process, and fix the emergency. So all these things kind of rolling around the same problem of, do I know what I'm going after? Do I know what I'm eligible for? And that's something that each county set up a little different to handle. So that's, reach out to your county veteran service officer. Thank you.
Okay, good advice. There's one back there.
I like the close ones. Good afternoon. I'm Pat Chong with the United Way of Tarrant County, and I'd just like to make an observation, and also I have a question for the panel. So the observation is that in 2012, thanks to Lockheed and Bell, United Way of Tarrant County set up a veterans fund specifically targeted to returning veterans services. So we're getting ready to issue another RFP shortly. I wanted to wait to hear this report before we issued it. But one of the things that we've done that I think is could be a model for the state is we funded a veteran at 211 in Tarrant County to follow up on the thousands of calls that 211 gets from active military and veterans families. And she follows up, knows a whole lot about veteran services, and can be that continuity. So, and the other thing is promoting 211 to the veterans community on an ongoing basis. And we generally don't have a whole lot of money to do that, but we try whenever we can. So my question is, there was an item in the report about financial literacy. Wonder if you would like to say a word about financial literacy. What does that mean in terms of services, so on? Thanks.
Kate will answer that one.
So I think what we were getting at is we've seen some initiatives across the country that are catching veterans as they come out, and sometimes it is through the veteran service officer in the community, sometimes it's through nonprofits, but teaching people things like how to work within a budget and forecasting for savings and building kind of a nest egg. It's something that we see in a number of transitioning service members who, particularly for if you're an enlisted service member and you live in the barracks and you earn $20,000 a year, it seems like a lot of money because you don't have as many living expenditures. And so we see kind of the gap in transition there. So this is a program that you could run, whether it be through nonprofits, I think there's a little bit that they try to do through the transition process through the services as folks enter the community. But I think they don't realize that they need the financial literacy training until it's kind of too late. So intervening early is important.
I'm Dennis Llewellyn with Rebuilding Together. We perform critical home repairs for health, safety, mobility, those kinds of things. I hear you talk about homelessness, but I haven't heard anything talked about repairs to keep senior veterans in their homes because of mobility issues. Or we're getting a number of post-911 veterans who need remodels to their bathrooms to be able to access that kind of thing. The second part of the question is to talk about referrals, because we find that so many veterans don't come to us directly, but they get referred by other parties. So the communication you're talking about, how is that going to work through referrals? But first, I wanted to find out about home repairs, obviously.
Okay. Can anybody there answer that one? Oh. No. You got a question. Okay. Hang on. Can anybody answer the question? Are there services for, I know there are services, but I don't know if it's better.
There are, and there's several groups, but this is kind of what I'm talking about, from before, is that we have all these groups out here. There's a group in the different counties for homelessness, but there's not really one for home repair or any type of thing like that, They say, well, that'll fall under homelessness, but it really doesn't, because at that point, it becomes low on the totem pole. So, that may be something you might want to bring up, with some of the other representatives in the room, but I don't see that being an aspect of any type of system anywhere, if that makes sense.
I think it goes back to where we started, which is, yes, we can house a veteran, but then what? Is the house adequate? Does it allow them the access they need to other services? And so each time we make a step forward, we've got other steps that uncovers for us.
We have an answer for the question.
Oh, got an answer.
Not so much an answer, but more the same. My name's Tim Lindsay. I'm with the Disabled American Veterans of Texas. I'm also vice president with VETCO, and I was on the advisory committee with Liberty House. What we're missing, and Mr. Sanders kept revisiting, was the fact that the housing issue, which we're on topic now. Right now, we have so many Gold Star families. The mothers, the wives, and it's political because of the funding they get from Congress through the VA. Their stipend is about $1,300 a month if they lose their husband in death indemnity compensation, which is a low number, right? And then the Gold Star mother, who with one child, will often be in substandard housing, waiting for years on a place that's affordable, and at the same time using over half her income for housing. And it goes back to the same thing about being underemployed, and I think that's directly contributed to the housing cost. Even though rates are low and the VA and the Texas Land Board does wonderful things qualifying us for benefits, we're missing the Gold Star families. We've really looked over them, and I think we need to really help them. Delivering meals around town, These houses are very substandard. And I think the USA Today this week reported a lot of this information in the civilian world about the substandard housing and people having to pay what used to be 25% or perhaps even a third more recently of their annual income. Now they're having to pay over half their income to be able to have a decent place to live.
Okay.
Can I speak to that for a second? I think you're really also identifying a really critical mismatch for areas, for example, that are accessible by transit are often among the emerging areas that are most expensive. And so one of those, if that mother needs to use transit, she can't afford housing near an option that doesn't require her to have a car. And we see that double bind all the time. Where I live out in, Tarrant County, out near the NAS, because the housing stock is less expensive, but I have no way to get my kid into Fort Worth for services or supports. I can't get a job closer. I have to, I find an employer near me that I can get to, but I'm never going to get a full-time job or one that's upwardly mobile. It's going to be a service-related job, entry level, and I'm going to be stuck there for some time. And so we see that same double bind on housing and transportation as well.
This is a real important problem for us as a result of the success of Dallas-Fort Worth. I'm on the mayor's committee, task force on poverty with Phil and some others, and one of the things that's talked about a lot is we have more access, we have more support, meaning vouchers, for housing than we have houses. And so we have in many areas around the DFW Metroplex such a competitive housing market that you just can't get people in the traditional ways into supported housing. And so I think this is one where county government, city government, otherwise, may be able to try to figure out how do we try to break that grip of the success of Dallas-Fort Worth.
And then to the second part of his question. real
Jim
quick.
Reed, Momentum Texas. I train veterans who want to be entrepreneurs. Train
Wait
about
just a minute,
2,000
sir,
veterans.
because I thought somebody was going to say the second part of the
Yeah,
question.
the second part of
Go
his
ahead, I
question
know
was
that.
about resources. Oh, hold on a minute, Jim.
Sure,
So the second
go,
part
man, go.
of your question was about resources, was it essentially boils down to, us in this room, right here. We are the resources that are coming out, taking care of this, and being able to put it out. The problem is, who here wouldn't like to have one spot where you could go to and put your stuff out, and you know that veterans are going to see it? Because we can put our stuff out in the middle of the Greyhound bus station, but does that mean a veteran's going to see it? That's what it essentially boils down to. We have to find and create places where veterans are and go, and then that's where we put our resources out. That's where we put the information out that where they know. And it has to be information that they can see and touch, because we can have online everything that we want. How many people here have used 211? Gone online, clicked on it? It gets a little confusing. It's simple, it's easy, but it gets very confusing because now you're clicking on here and it brings up a map with 5 different things on it. And then you're like, okay, where am I at? Where's all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I just open up the phone book. And I'm not trying to, bash on 211. It's just when you are confused and when you're lost in the sauce and when you don't know where to go, you're looking for that handhold, and it could just be something physical, like, here's my card. What's the first thing they ask you? Can you put your number on the back of it?
I feel like I want to get my hands around this needs analysis because it helps us understand problems. But we need to have goals. I think we need a vision for the DFW area to make it the most veteran-centric delivery area for services in the country. So we set up goals for ourselves. We understand the needs and understand the needs better. So what are we doing about them? What are the gaps? Where are the best practices? Where can we learn from others that have really got their arms around this? So this is kind of a first step. You analyze needs, but then where do you take it from there in terms of systematic planning, thought? Like the United Way does. United Way does a good job of this.
I think that's one of the reasons we're here today, right?
Thank you, Bob Ray. I'm Phil Ritter with the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute. And you asked the question, what are the politicians doing and what's going on at the state level? And I wanted to draw the attention of everybody in the room to something positive that happened in the last session of the legislature, which was the passage of Senate Bill 55 by Senator Jane Nelson. And what this legislation does, it creates a $20 million program to address gaps in veterans' mental health needs. And that $20 million can be drawn down by proposals emanating from communities like ours, matched dollar for dollar by local philanthropic resources, and also, county judges, by county resources or municipal resources. There will be an RFP released probably in April or early May from the Health and Human Services Commission pursuant to this legislation, and there's $20 million on the table to match $20 million worth of community-discerned needs in veterans' mental health needs. And I want to compliment Michelle Muncy and the Veterans Funders Coalition for being instrumental in helping to shape this initiative, but we're really going to need the community to step up and respond to this and really have it be informed by what we heard in the needs assessment today. I mean, this assessment couldn't be better timed to take advantage of that state program. Thank you.
Wow, that information alone was worth being here today, right? Okay, go ahead. Wait.
Hi, my name is Margarita. I'm with the Mission Continues. I'm the Dallas 1st Platoon leader. And I just want to make a couple points because I myself have been a homeless female vet. I mean, I'm a veteran. So when I got out, I believe women made up about 10, 11% of the military. And now in 2016, we make up about 16%. And so I can tell you that's where a lot of organizations are failing, where they're not realizing that these numbers are jumping up, and they're jumping up pretty quick. When I got out of the Army, I was taught how to do a resume, how to sign up for unemployment, and how to sign up for SNAP food benefits. So basically, I was being told, you're going to eventually fail, and this is where you start. So I really think that when we get out, that really has to stop. Another thing is they don't teach you the things about how disability really works. They tell you have one time to apply for it, and then that's it. And that's not true. So I would like to thank God for organizations like Attitudes in Attire, who helps women. What they did for me 2 years ago, they helped me identify as a female veteran. And so now my job is to help women and other veterans in the DFW area. So my thing is when I look at these numbers, it's very staggering to me that no one's really going, well, what can we do for these female vets? Because when I go up to the VA and I say, hey, I can't get an appointment to see my specialist, can they add on another one? They're telling me, no, we're cutting budget. So we're actually taking out the women's clinic. So I just wanted to bring that up to everyone because we make a big chunk of the veteran population. And so I just really need to bring that point up just because I think it's important, and I don't think a lot of people talk about that.
Hi, I'm George Salone with the VA's Veterans Economic Community Initiative. Philip, question for you on the survey. What was your statistics? What was the population of guys that you surveyed? How many people did you interview? How many sensing sessions did you conduct in the area?
Can be for both of us because it was a joint effort. So methodologically for the survey, so we had approximately, and I believe it's in the end notes there, we used a snowball sample. So what we did was we reached out to all the organizations in the area that we had built relationships with early in the summer before we started coming here. And we reached out to those organizations to reach out to their membership. We did 3 big pushes in September, in November, and December. And depending on the question, so one of the complications of surveys is that folks tend to drop off as the survey goes along. So as we built the survey, we tried to build it in a way that was focused and able to navigate folks through to the end. We also conducted interviews with approximately 50 individuals, and that was looking at specific substantive matter experts on different issues such as women's health, women's empowerment in the region, as well as healthcare. So we talked to a number of social workers who were out in the field. And then we conducted 2 different weeks of working groups throughout the region. We tried to focus on each of the counties in the region and make sure that each of those were represented at the table. And I'm happy to send along the follow-up statistic information to you as well. But really what we were trying to do is get a holistic picture, not only looking at the data that you see in there that came from the VA, but what is the sense on the ground, both for the individual service member and those who are providing services to them.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wood from the VA, and I'm a program manager of about 7 homeless programs within North Texas. So I want to make sure you walk away today with resource numbers, since that was a question about how you access housing and homeless women's services. I manage those programs. We have 2 hotlines that are resource points. One is for housing screening, so you can call and get screened by phone, or you can come into one of our walk-in locations around North Texas. But that housing screening phone number, if you want to write that down, if you're needing to share that, is the main Dallas VA number, 800-849-3597, and that's extension 78955, and that's housing screenings. We also have a resource hotline that's a national program. You should be aware it's on all of our websites. That helps social workers help you connect, much like 211, but you're working specifically with a social worker to help connect you. And that's 877-424-3838. And our homeless women program that helps at-risk and homeless women connect with case management to all of the services they need and handhold them until they're housed is our main 800 number, but extension 73175.
And thank you for that, seriously.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elaine Zavala, and I work for the Fund for Veterans Assistance Program. It's a department within the Texas Veterans Commission. We're the state agency for advocating for veterans benefits and services. And so what my primarily is to outreach about our funding for veteran services, specifically to community organizations such as nonprofits, local governments like MHMRs, and VSOs, veteran service organizations. So I wanted to kind of do an outreach effort right now to notify you that we do have funding for services such as general assistance, things as basic needs, furniture, safety, housing. For example, the modification issue for elderly vets, we have a grant for that. It's called our Housing for Texas Heroes program. Also, we have a mental health component. And so this year, the RFP will be available coming August 2016. So that is when our next round of funding will be. So if you have any questions, please come see us. The Texas Veterans Commission, we can help you get to that application on our website. We also offer a webinar that will help you fill out that application as well. Primarily, our funding comes from the Lottery Commission, and so funding veteran services statewide, as we all know, is a challenge. But we want to get that money out. And we also, one last thing, we also provide services for veteran treatment courts. So we ask that your counties come in and apply for that grant funding as well. So just doing a little outreach. And, but please come see me if you have any questions, and we'll get you that information.
What's the website?
I'm sorry? Oh, website.
Our website is TVC, so that's Texas Veterans Commission, those initials, .texas, Texas is spelled out, .gov. And primarily, you're looking for the Fund for Veterans Assistance Grant Program.
Okay, we have time for about 2 more questions or comments, sir.
My name's Alonzo Peterson. I'm with Giving Hope Incorporated. We're in Denton County, and we work with veterans and other people in the community who are homeless or at risk of being homeless. And we see, especially with our veterans, a lot of the clients that come to us for assistance come to us to ask for rent, but sometimes they come to us a little bit too late. If you have a landlord, a lot of times the landlord they're sticky. They kind of want their money every month. So we have our veterans usually are coming to us maybe 2, maybe 3 months delinquent, and we've got to do everything we can, speaking on the financial literacy, to speed that up. The quicker they can come to us, the quicker landlords are more willing to work with them. Just a question for the researchers, though. I know you talked about the continuum of care is for Dallas and Tarrant County. For Denton, we're part of what's called the balance of state continuum of care. So it's kind of all the smaller areas of the state are kind of part of that continuum. So I wasn't sure if you looked at their data.
We did, and that was one of the kind of the presentation questions that we had, is because the balance of state, it included so much that was outside of the region. We wanted to, we tailored it so that it showed the regions that we knew were exactly in the region. But I think your point is valid in that there is a larger veterans community, and there is a larger a homeless veteran community within the state.
My name is Linda Parrish, and I work with the U.S. Army Wounded Warrior Program, and I do believe I've done this job way too long. The issue I have is I carry a caseload of about 160 of our most severely ill and injured medical board veterans, Army. I have a list of resources a mile long, but if people don't answer their phone, they don't return the calls, emails, whatever, that's not doing the veteran any good. They call me back and say, Linda, I called all these people on the list. Nobody calls me back. There's no voicemail. It's not going to do a hill of beans of good. That's just FYI. That's what I see. Then also, I am 100% with you that you need to work with the veteran from start to finish, because you can, Band-Aid and Band-Aid and Band-Aid, but if you don't make sure they have a job or they have all their benefits, we're going to go nowhere. So I agree.
That's the next to the last one, and then this will be the last one over here.
So I'm Richard Conness. I'm the chapter president for the Army Association in the North Texas Audie Murphy chapter. One of the things that we're doing, we're stepping out in front of everybody. This October, we're going to be hosting the largest affordable housing summit in the United States here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Secretary of HUD Castro, Secretary of VA McDonald are scheduled to be attending. But what we're doing is hosting a large event where if you're a charity that does anything in regards to military housing, homelessness, transitional housing, long-term housing, you need to come see me today. I intentionally wore my Hawaiian shirt and my Cav hat so you can find me. But we will be able to fund those charities that help support this housing summit. That's what we do. We do big events and we fund smaller military charities. Come see me. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'd like to say I appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon. My name is Tracy Little. I'm the Director of Veteran Services for Dallas County. I work for Judge Clay Jenkins. And I'd also just like to mention very quickly my counterparts here at my table who are also county service officers. Nakima Horton, who is the president of the Veterans Coalition of North Central Texas. But the first point I'd like to make is, first of all, we are boots on the ground in our respective communities. We've got Denton County, we've got Collin County, we're Dallas County, and Nakima is all the counties. So I'd just like to put that out there to give you some information, just a little bit on what we do. We are boots on the ground, as I mentioned. We are out there providing benefits or assisting veterans in getting their VA, their state benefits, and helping them with other services that they may need, such as financial assistance, transportation, housing, and some of the other things that we've discussed today. But unfortunately, we don't get assistance for that from our county. I mean, that's just a fact. We get assistance for those things from all of you in the audience. So what I'm saying to you this afternoon is, for those of you who I don't know, which is very few of you, I'd like to reach out to you, extend the invitation to introduce yourselves to me, because the thing is, we've got a lot of work to do, not just in Dallas County. We've got a lot of work to do to help veterans to get to where they need to be, but we can't do it by ourselves. You can't do it by yourself. And if you think you can, you're probably at the wrong meeting. So, but I'd just like to extend that invitation out. Hey, we want to meet you. We want to get the work done, and that's what this should be about. Thank you very much.
All right, and since we have two judges in the house, I'm going to go to one and let him have a final word. Joseph?
Well, I had a whole list of things to say, but I probably won't take up a lot of your time. I will quote, I think it was Scott Walker, who said, "We measure success by the people who are off public assistance rather than those that are on." Several of you have talked about jobs. The best social program is a job. Some veterans are disabled, some are not. Most of them can work. I encourage you to find, even if it's a nonprofit, such as Hugs Cafe in McKinney, that hires adults with special needs, find a place for them to work. It's the best social program. I also want to, is Lori here? Lori McMahon? I want to recognize Congressman Sam Johnson for the new VA clinic that's going in North Dallas, because the VA hospital in South Dallas is, as we say in Texas, a fur piece from some of the counties in North Texas. And I want to just applaud all the nonprofits that are here, because y'all are the folks that are going to interact one-on-one more than the governments. The VSOs, we've got 2 of them here from Collin County that you mentioned, thank you. But the VSOs do their work and they do it well. But the nonprofits, I mean, we've got an organization here from Collin County that has kayaking for disabled veterans. I mean, y'all are the folks that are going to be the person-to-person people to help. So government needs to rally around and do the organization and provide the infrastructure, the overarching support. But the nonprofits are the people that I want to recognize today, because you are the ones that are going to do the person-to-person support. I'm a 25-year Army veteran, and let me tell you, I can't decide which of your time frames I fit in, but this is vital to veterans, both disabled and not disabled. So thank you for being here, nonprofits. Y'all are the ones that I want to recognize.
All right, thank you, Judge. And folks, would you join me in thanking our panel members for a great job today? Appreciate it.